everybody. Good morning. Nice to see so many bright faces on Sunday morning early. Welcome. My name is Esther Dressler, and I'm one of the co-chairs for this conference.
And I'm Glied Goldstein, and as co-chairs of the National Policy Conference on Holocaust Education, we'd like to welcome you here this morning for what we know is going to be a thought-provoking and inspiring day. We're both members of Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Senate, and proud to be longtime supporters of the great work that the organization carries out every day. From events like Freedom Day, to Speaker's Idol, to the Tour for Humanity mobile classroom, that travels across the province of Ontario, we're proud to support the award-winning, innovative, and educational programs that are impacting tens of thousands of students every year.
The impacting professional development programming for leaders in a variety of professional fields, including law enforcement and education, is a great source of pride for us. Looking at this audience and seeing the many directors of education, school board trustees, superintendents, educators, chiefs of police, law enforcement personnel, business leaders, students, and volunteers in attendance is a testament to the reach and impact of Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Centre. We are thrilled to have Toronto's District School Board Director of Education, John Molloy, with us today as the honorary chair of this conference. We will hear from him in just a few minutes.
We would also like to acknowledge a courageous group of people who have joined us here today. Could the Holocaust survivors in the room please stand? These courageous people are at your tables and around throughout the day to engage in conversation with you. I encourage you to ask them about their experiences and about their views on the future of Holocaust education. Ask them questions about their stories so you too can become a witness to their history. Each of us has a role to play in the future of Holocaust education. Thank you.
I wanted to share an experience with you that became an influential moment in my life, and certainly one of the reasons why I've become involved in Friends of Simon Wiesenthal. I was born in Brandon, Manitoba, population about 40,000 people, and in the 70s it was a very homogeneous community. I was the only Jewish family. There was maybe one other black family, one other Indian family, one other Chinese family out of 40,000 people. In grade 8, my English teacher took the task of teaching us the Diary of Anne Frank. I was quite excited as a little Jewish girl, thinking that everybody would get to learn a little bit about my people's history. The problem was that the teacher wasn't really qualified or competent to teach this particular subject. The discussion took a very disgusting turn when we started to talk about the Holocaust, and the discussion was open to these other 13-year-old children. People started laughing, wondering how quickly you could kill Jews, how many Jews were killed, and just the technique of how it was done, and it became quite a joke. The teacher lost complete control of the classroom, and I sat there as a little 13-year-old, sort of in a nightmare. You know the kind when you want to scream and you want to call for help, but you can't. The words just don't come out. So I was just quiet, went home, and told my mom and dad what had happened. And the next day, I got to class, and we quickly wound up Anne Frank, and that was that. My mom had called the superintendent, who was a friend of hers, and he had called the principal, and he had called the teacher into the classroom, and just nothing ever happened of it. Looking at the world that we're living in today, I wonder whether the possibility of that will happen in classrooms, and I suspect it does. I would ask you to listen to the speakers today and think about how you would address such negative reactions that you could encounter in your classroom.
As the responsibility for the future of Holocaust education shifts to each of us, I ask you to consider some difficult questions. What is your role in Holocaust education? How will you preserve the history of the Holocaust and the testimony of survivors? How will you ensure that the understanding of the human cost of the Holocaust is understood, not just the memorization of dates and facts? We all have different reasons and motivations for pursuing studies in Holocaust education. Some of us have direct connections to the Holocaust, having lost family members during this period, while others find morally challenging questions that draw them to this history. Whatever the reason, whatever drove you to be here today, take it all in.
At this time, I would like to invite Toronto District School Board Director of Education, Tools for Intolerance alumni, and Honorary Chair of this conference, Dr. John Molloy, to share some of his thoughts with you.
Though I have been honored with the privilege of being Honorary Chair, it's a representative role because the work has to happen everywhere and beyond. This is such a unique opportunity for us to engage in meaningful conversations about the importance of Holocaust education, current educational practices, and looking to see how we will continue this work into the future. As mentioned, I first met the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center over 10 years ago as a superintendent in York Region when I was invited to a very profound learning experience at the Museum for Tolerance in Los Angeles. And there I learned the significance of story, of telling the story, the experience of the Holocaust, of an experience of such profound discrimination and violence in a way that moved out of the head, out of the theory, into the heart, which inspires action. And to that end, it has continued to motivate my own personal experience of leading in such a significant place called education, where when we do our work well, I believe we can change the hearts and minds of our students. The Toronto District School Board is very, very connected to this work, as I'm guessing many of you know. And I just want to share a few thoughts of what it is we've tried to do in order to continue to expand our student and our staff and our community's experiences so that we will always remember and we will never forget, so tragedy such as the Holocaust never happens again. So of course, in the month of May, we recognize Jewish heritage. And our schools participate in many, many different activities, but I want to share one in particular because we're so very proud of it, and one of our trustees, Shelley Laskin, was one of the leaders of this. In 2017, the TDSB had the honor of hosting the international exhibit entitled Anne Frank, A History for Today, brought to us from the Anne Frank House in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. This exhibit tells the story of Anne Frank set against the background of the Holocaust, makes use of the images from the Frank family, includes quotations from her diary, and displays information about the most important developments of our time. Over the course of the month of May, the TDSB was honored to open the doors of John Polanyi Collegiate Institute to over 2,000 students and 2,000 members of the public. And it was so powerful for us to have that great privilege to offer that learning opportunity. And because of the fact that it was so significant, I asked some questions in preparation for today about that particular Anne Frank exhibit, but also about our work in ensuring that our course that we have in many of our schools that truly teaches our students about genocide, what is it that matters to you? And this is some of what I learned from a teacher. Thank you for helping us to make this experience so relevant to student lives. I really felt that our students got the message about how racism and intolerance certainly flourishes and can have terrible consequences. Another student who shared with me about the genocide course said this: "It is unique in that it teaches us really important lessons about why genocide actually occurred and why it can be inevitable if we're not careful. We learned that the road towards Holocaust was littered with decisions to act or to stay quiet or to resist, and that these decisions had immense consequences." I mean, that's from one of our students. That's powerful. How many of us actually think and reflect and act on that level? And yet, a student shared that with me, and it speaks to the power of learning. Another comment: the Genocide and Crimes Against Humanity course allows students to delve into complex histories. And this is from a teacher. As historians, as moral philosophers, as young people trying to better understand a world that can be very difficult and confusing. And I think that's a really important point that I'm going to stop and just emphasize. Our world, our community, our nation can always pose tremendously complex social and challenging problems for our young people to navigate. we have work to do to be sure that our students have the tools they require to critique, to assess, to speak up, to ensure that they don't stand by. And yet, we know a lot about who in a school community has more power than others. And when a student might have more power, we call it bullying, for example, others may choose to stand by. Obviously serious, not to the same degree as what we're speaking about here in terms of Holocaust. But what our students shared with me is they understand through reflecting on the experiences of others that they cannot stand by if they are witnessing something that clearly cannot continue. They have to find their voice, even when it's impossible to do so because of fear or because of what may be transpiring in that particular school community. So what I'm trying to say is, whether the child is 4 years of age, 10 years of age, 17 years of age, we have so much to do in partnership with you, in partnership with our families, to ensure that we're providing the learning that we need to provide so that we create for our students a life that understands the importance of justice, for our communities, citizens who understand how to work for what's right, and then, of course, that helps our goal. I look forward to hearing from the panels today. I look forward to learning new insights and perspectives. And I'll close with this. The concepts of equity and inclusivity, which is what I was asked to just frame some remarks around, is foundational, are foundational in the Toronto District School Board, as well as I'm guessing in every board across the province. But I'll close by saying this commitment means a few things. And I think that if we hold these things high through our work, we will make a difference. It means that we name injustice courageously. It means that we challenge exclusion. It means that we foster opportunities to grow empathy and compassion in our students. We confront the practice of remaining silent in the face of racism, homophobia, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and any other discrimination that we witness. We promote dialogue. Because, as I said earlier, the issues that face us are tremendously complex. We hold very strong perspectives based upon who we are, what we've experienced, and what we bring to the conversation. I truly believe where we find spaces and places to really dialogue, not just debate my or your idea. That true dialogue brings about, if we have worked on developing compassion and empathy in each other, especially our students, that dialogue, I believe, brings about tremendous transformation. And that's what education, in my perspective, truly is about. Because ignorance should never be an excuse for things as tragic and awful as Holocaust. Ignorance can never be an excuse for other discrimination that we experience in our communities and in our world. And ignorance can never be an excuse to hurt and to harm. And that's why it's important that we're here today. And that's why the work we do is so privileged, because we make a difference for the lives of students and their families. I hope you have an amazing conference, and I look forward to learning with you this day. Thank you.
As these survivors share their history, they change the lives of the students they meet. Over just the past few years, there have been many occasions where a student has let my father know just how impactful he has been on their lives. Just a short time ago, a young high school student recognized him at a coffee shop, stood up, came over to his table to thank him for speaking at her school, and appreciated what an impact he had had on her life. More recently, my father spoke at Ryerson University, and a student who knew he would be there and had heard him before insisted that her parents come to hear him as well. She said he had made sure she would never forget the Holocaust. That is the power of our survivors, the power to change lives and make the world a better place. And I feel, as a child of Holocaust survivors, that it is my responsibility to make sure that in the years to come, this history is never forgotten. That's why I'm so passionate about Holocaust education.